All right, good. So we are recording, and our today's session is Let the Customer Promise Be Your Guiding Light. Today's Nafees is joining us from Australia. It's already midnight there, and I hope we'll get to know more interesting things from you, Nafees. So a brief introduction for Nafees. Over to you then.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. I know it's not the usual day when you usually have the session for this meetup group, but yeah, thank you for coming along today. So today, what I want to talk about is how do we orient ourselves, and is customer the central piece of that orientation or not? And what I'm proposing here is that we should, in our organizations, be basing our decision based on what our customer promises. Which takes us to this point about what customer promises. Before I go into the details of that, let me first say thanks to the organizing committee for having me and arranging this venue. And all the information that I'm sharing with all the participants is really, really valuable. So thank you, Khurram, and thank you, Zishan. In the next 40 to 45 minutes, the things that I would try to cover is identify and define what a culture is. What do we really mean when we say what culture is? The presentation is based on a culture model called Schneider culture model. So I'll describe the Schneider culture model in sufficient detail for us to be able to understand the subsequent sessions. I will provide a link for an assessment survey that we don't have to fill during the session today, but you can, in your own time, you could fill the surveys yourself, or could send it to some of the participants in your organization to evaluate what kind of culture your organization have. We will talk about the customer promise extension, which was added to the Schneider cultural model. And then we will talk about the link between the culture, the leadership, and the customer promise. We will briefly, while we're going through this agenda, we will touch upon who is this session for. Briefly describing anybody who's interested in leading a transformation or changing the ways of working in an organization. The people either who are in the organization, who are the managers, the executives, the C-level people, or the people who go as consultants or as coaches to the organization. And when do we need to use this cultural model? Pretty much anytime you like. If you're starting a transition, you can use it then. If you have already been on a journey for some time and you see, okay, how has the journey been going on so far? And, just pause and reflect and see which direction do we want to go to further. You could use that at that point in time as well. So this pretty much, you can use it at any time. In terms of the format of the presentation, it's okay to raise your hand and ask a question. If you have raised your hand and it's been a couple of minutes and I haven't looked at your question, haven't gotten back to you, somebody please speak up so that I remember that I haven't answered the question. So I'm happy to take questions during the session. They don't have to come at the end. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, and I can also keep an eye on the chat. If there are questions, I can also try to highlight that.
Lovely. That would be great. Cheers, mate. Okay, so culture is something that gets thrown around a lot, that hey, the culture of our organization is not great, or hey, we have worked a lot and our culture is really good. We value facilitation, we value empowerment. But what I have noticed is that having worked as a consultant in lot of organizations, is people don't really understand what it really means. So let me take a stab at defining what culture is. And I guess the simplest definition that I found was for Marvin Bower, where he defined culture as the way we do things around here to succeed. Now, this is interesting because this is intentionally vague, but it does define a couple of interesting things about how we do things here, and not only how we do things here, but how we do things here in order to succeed as well. The Schneider culture model that we will be discussing is a model. And as somebody said, all models are wrong. Some models are useful. And so it's important that, when we look at a model, we look at it as a guidance, but not as a rule. Because these models provide us a way of making some sense of the world that we live in. They are not scriptures that we need to follow by the book. The second aspect is that usually with the models, the actual output, the actual model is of secondary importance. The act of modeling is more important. And what I mean by that is that if you use the Schneider culture model, it's not enough to kind of identify the organization and say, hey, we are a organization of the competence culture. But having the discussion with the executives of the organization, or with the important people or the middle managers of the organization, and understanding what does that actually mean for the organization, and doing that modeling process, that modeling activity itself, is more important than identifying which quadrant we sit in. So to make the definition of culture a bit more tangible, how Schneider, the author of the Schneider culture model, identifies 5 focus areas. So the first focus area is strategic focus. And what he means by that is that how does an organization define success? What does it mean for definition to be successful? And if it has identified a definition, what are the mechanisms that they use to reach to that objective? And in that approach, how do they deal with their customers and their constituents? And if this is what defines the strategic focus, the second focus area is that what is the role of the leadership and the management in that setup? What does the leadership focus on? And whatever they focus on, how do they execute this? In what style do they carry themselves? The third focus area is related to the structural aspects of the organization. How is the organization structured? Is it hierarchical structure? Is it flat? Is it shaped in circles? What kind of structure have we got? And in that structure, what is the role of the employee? What is expected of the employee? And how are the task focused? Are the task focused on output, or are they focused on outcome? Are they focused on individual productivity? Are they focused on delivering value for customer? So this is another aspect of the structural focus of the organization. The fourth one is who holds the power? What is the nature of power and authority? Is it based on somebody who is the most tech savvy person? Or is it who is the sweetest talker in the organization? Or somebody who has the charisma of leading and providing a vision to rest of the organization? And then how does the organization make the decision? Is it based on consensus, or is it the hippo based on the person with the highest salary in the room? And whenever the organization has to go through a change process, how does the organization go through that process? What is an organization's approach to managing change? And the fifth and the last focus area, how Schneider defines one of the focus areas of the culture, is what is the relationship in the organization like? What are the key norms when you walk into an organization? What the room feels like? What does the climate feel like? How do people relate with each other? What is the warmness in the room kind of aspect? So these are the kind of fuzzy feeling kind of an aspect that we look at. So this is pretty much how Schneider defines. These are the 5 tangible areas to look at when we look at any of the culture. Michael Sohota, he's one of the few trainers from Scrum Alliance who teach the Certified Agile Leadership course, and he defines the culture to be the wibbly wobbly thing that connects everything. And if you look at this picture, this is one of the pictures that he presented in that leadership courses, that there is a how we pay the employees, how we make decisions, what are the policies, do we ask each individual to file a leave request even when they are sick, because because that's the process and the policies of the organization. How the organization is structured, what are the values and beliefs of the system? Do people feel valued? Do the people feel safe? Do we create trust in the organization? What is the conscious level of the organization? So this is all of these things, when they work together, this is how Michael Sohota would define the culture. If you have a question. Okay, I'll move on. So this is a survey that.
Nafees, can you please explain a bit more about the recent last slide?
This one?
Yes.
So the intent of this slide is if you look at this, at the bottom end are the things related to structure, how the decisions are made, how who gets, how we define the raises, the salaries, with the tangible processes that, if you have to get a leave approved, this is what you have to do. If you have to, for example, buy a new equipment, what is the process for that, how the roles are defined. So anything in the bottom half are things related to structure, things which are pretty tangible, things that can be seen. Whereas the top half of this picture are things related at the conscious level. What is the purpose of the organization? Do you feel safe working in this organization? The unwritten rules and norms of the organization. How do leaders behave? How would you behave as an employee if the leader is standing right next to you, as opposed to the leader not standing right next to you? How decisions would be made? So the idea of this diagram is that it's not only the structure alone that defines the culture of an organization, and it's not only the fluffy, the conscious level kind of stuff that defines the culture. It's the mixture of all of them combined, and the wibbly wobbly thing that moves around, and everything is connected with everything else. This is how we define the culture. So that the intent Michael Sota had with this slide was that some organizations, some people, some theorists, some people from academics can say, hey, structure, you might have heard structure eats strategy for breakfast. And somebody also said, I can't recall exactly, that structure defines something on culture as well. So the intent behind this slide is that if we look at only half of it and we think we have a good grasp of culture, and more importantly, good grasp of changing a culture, we would be fooling ourselves. We need to make sure that we look at all aspects of it. That includes the unwritten rules, the behavior, the purpose of the organization, as well as structure. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and very great slide. Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, so we would not be doing any survey during this call today, but there is a link from bit.ly/lastconf-culture. You could go to that link and answer 20 questions. Unfortunately, the way the survey is set up, you would not be able to see the results at the end. But what you would get by going through this link is trying to understand the type of questions that get asked in this survey. Reach out to me afterwards if you are interested to running this survey within your organization, and I can provide you more details on how to do that. The idea is that this culture can be run in an organization, let's say with a sample enough, good enough, which is representative of the organization. So if you have 200 people, so you could probably select a couple of executives, 3 or 4 middle managers, and maybe 10 to 15 people from at a lower level. So have a spectrum of people from all the different layers of the hierarchy, and have them fill that survey, and then the results are plotted, and then you can see what is the type of culture for your organization. Word of caution, it is a model. So the benefit is not the answer that you get out of the activity, but doing the activity itself and having the discussion around that. So have a look at this link, and if you want to run a survey like this in your organization, reach out to me, and I can help you set up that afterwards as well. All right, now let's look at the Schneider culture model. So how are we going with the time, Zishan and Khurram, if you could?
So far we have used, I think 15 minutes. We still have 40 minutes left.
Awesome, good, okay, cool. If you could just give me a reminder when 15 minutes are left.
Absolutely.
That would be
yeah,
great.
Absolutely.
I'm getting lost and getting immersed into so much that I'll lose the sense of time.
No worries. We have the whole night to spend.
I'm sure we have. Okay, so trying to understand what the Schneider culture model is, how the model is structured. So according to Schneider, one aspect how we can define the culture is how does an organization make decisions. So if we put this on x-axis, on one end of the spectrum, we have the decision making, which is personal. And what do I mean by personal is where the decisions are made based on what the people feel like, what is their opinion, what they think is the right thing to do. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, the decisions are made in an impersonal way. Means we will look at the statistics, we look at the previous data, we would look at the trends, we would look at the charts, and we'd say, hey, this is the right thing to do. And this is how, so when we define it on two different ends of the spectrum, what it means is that the organizations would lie somewhere on that horizon. And it's not that if one organization makes decision based on a personal decision-making style, it never uses the data, but it's when the data is available and when opinions are available, a particular type of organization would give more value to data, and another type of organization would give more value to the opinions. So when we say an organization sits more on the left end of the spectrum, on the personal end of the spectrum, it's not that they never look at the data, but it's that they give more importance to the opinions, to the gut feelings, and to know what people feel that this is the right thing to do. And this is something that to remember in all of this that I'm defining, that, you know, when I say something about an organization, it's not black and white. It's that, hey, this is what they pay more attention to. All the other aspects, all the other approaches are still there, but this is the most important thing for that organization. So the first horizon, do we have a question?
No, there was no question. However, I request that whoever joins, please mute your mic so we get the session on the time as well. Back to you.
Cool. So this was the first axis, the x-axis, where we say how do the organizations make decisions. On one end is the personal decision making, and the other end is the impersonal decision making. The second dimension is what does the organization pay attention to, and at one end of the spectrum we have the actuality. What is the problem right now? What is the biggest concern right now? Let's solve that problem right now. And the other end of the spectrum is possibility. So think what is possible. Think is what we can achieve if we were to think out of the box kind of an organization. And if we mix these two different dimensions, what we get at the end is really 4 quadrants. So the combination of impersonal decision making and paying attention to the problems in the current, the actual problems, gives us the top right quadrant, which is the command culture. And if we mix the personal decision making with the problems at hand right now, the actuality attention, gives us the top left quadrant, which is the collaboration quadrant. And if we combine the possibility attention to impersonal decision making, it gives us the bottom right quadrant, the competence culture. And lastly, if we combine the possibility attention with personal decision making, it gives us the bottom left cultivation culture. I will define these cultures in a moment as well. Any questions so far? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Now, remember how we defined 5 focus areas and the sub elements under those focus areas a few minutes earlier? What we will do is we will look at all those tangible aspects of how we see a culture, and we will try to map it on the 4 quadrants that we just looked at. So if you look at definition of success, and I have kind of a cheat sheet on the bottom right, so we can continue looking at the bottom right. The top right is the command culture, the top left is collaboration, the bottom right is competence, and bottom left is cultivation. So when you see the picture in the middle, which is talking about the definition of success, we can always look at the picture at the bottom right and kind of relate out. So the command culture is the orange one, the competence culture is the yellow one, the cultivation is the blue one, and the gray one is the collaboration culture. So people who are looking at it can probably make some sense of it as well. Now, how do organizations define success? In a command culture organization, the organizations want to become the biggest out there. They want to dominate the market. They want to be the only player in the market. Whereas in a collaboration culture or type of an organization, they want to build an organization that thrives on synergy, thrives on building partnership with its customers. The competence kind of an organization wants to be the company that provides the best state-of-the-art products to its customers. And the cultivation kind of an organization would want to be an organization that would define its success as the company that fulfills or realizes the growth in the people, growing the people and realizing their fullest potential. And how do these organizations achieve that success? So the command organization would like to get control and then keep the control. The organizations which fall under the collaboration category would want to build teams. They want to establish positive relationship, and they want to utilize one another, helping each other out. The competence organization would want to have the highest quality people working for them. They would want to pursue excellence. The cultivation organization, on the other hand, would want to grow people, and they would strive to accomplish the highest order purpose, things which are bigger than themselves, things that individuals cannot achieve, but when they come together, they can achieve as a whole. And how do what is their approach with their customers or their constituents? The command organizations want to control, they want to offer the service, and they want to be the only service in town. The collaboration organizations, however, want to partner with their customers. The competition organizations, as I was saying earlier, want to provide the best value, the state-of-the-art value for their customers. And the cultivation organizations want to enrich the people that they are working with. Now that pretty much defines the strategic focus of the organization. When we go to the leadership and management focus, in a command kind of an organization or command culture organization, the leaders' focus is to maintain the power. They are cautious, but they are realistic. They are not visionaries. They are authoritative as well. In a collaborative culture organization, the leadership focus is to build teams. They are very participative in nature. They are realistic, but they bring the right mix of people, and they ensure diversity, and they value diversity as well. The competence culture, the leader focus would be visionary. You can think of Steve Jobs here, for example. They would want to push limits. They want to recruit the most competent people out there. They want to challenge their subordinates. This is what they focus on. In a cultivation organization, these would be the people who would empower the people. They would be the cultivators. The cultivators, how somebody plants a seed and then gives water to it to help it grow. This is the focus of the leadership in a cultivation organization. The style in command organization, the leaders are very, very prescriptive. They are impersonal. They are very task driven. They are methodical, but they are very careful as well. They don't try out new things. In a collaboration organization, the leadership, the management style is very collegial, very democratic, very personal as well, very people driven. They are emotional at times as well, and it would give you a feel that they are very informal as well. In a competence organization, in a competence culture organization, the management focus is very, very task driven. It is intense. It is kind of feels, it is emotional. It is challenging, and it is because it is challenging and it is very task driven. It is crisp. It is to the point. They don't beat about the bush at all. In a cultivation organization, it is extremely personal. It is driven by emotion, by the purpose. It is based on people. It is based on nurturing the people and driving getting the best out of them. So we've looked at the strategic focus. We've looked at the leadership and management focus. If you look at the structural focus, the first thing is the organizational form. In a command organization, this organization would usually be in a form of a hierarchy. There would be multiple layers of hierarchies, the managers and then sub-managers, and above them directors, and these vice presidents, and then the presidents and the CIOs, and it would be layer after layer after layer. In a collaboration organization, it would be group of people clustered together, whatever makes sense to get the job done. In a competence culture, they would be usually based on metrics. Metrics you must have read, where the functional and the two skills mixed together, and it would be based on adhocracy. In a cultivation organization, they would be structured in a wheel-like structure. Sociocracy and holocracy kind of the structures would probably be prevalent here. The role of an employee is an interesting one, because in a command organization and membership focus and when management's focus was for a command organization, what is expected of the employees is to comply. if the directions are given to them, they're supposed to follow the directions and to be useful for the organization, adhere to the rules and the requirements, adhere to the requirements, and stay in the roles that they were defined for them. In a collaboration organization, the role of an employee is to be the team player, honor the diversity, and take initiative and be generalist. In a competence culture, the expectation is to be a specialist, to pursue excellence, and to become the best that you can possibly be, to be an expert, to be creative, and to be functionally independent. In a cultivation organization, you should be something who can think out of the box. You need to be creative. You need to be able to grow yourself. You need to be able to think like growth is possible. When you talk about growth mindset, so you need to have somebody who's there to not only think outside the box, but think that potential is possible, growth is possible, and to be committed to it as well. In terms of what the task focuses on, in a command organization, the specialist would be channeled into service of functions, and they would execute that work. Whereas in a collaboration organization, the individuals, because they are generalist in nature, would serve in numerous functions. In a competence culture, the functions would be channeled into service of specialists, which is pretty similar to the command organization. As in a cultivation organization, there would be no boundaries. All people would be able to do everything that is required of them. This is an interesting one, how the power is defined. In a command organization, role, position, hierarchy, these things define who has the most authority, who has the most power in the organization. The higher the food chain you live in, more power you've got. The CIO says something, VP won't be able to say no to it. The VP says something, the middle managers won't be able to say no to it. Middle management says something, the mere mortals like you and me won't be able to say anything to it. Or maybe I'm assuming something, maybe some of you are actually C levels or VP level people here. In a collaboration culture organization, it's the relationship. Who do you have the relationships with defines who holds power. If I have good relationship with the important people, I will have my say. In a competence culture, the techiest of the techie would have the highest power because it's an organization which thrives on pursuing excellence. So the experts would have the highest power. In a cultivation organization, the people with the charisma, the people with the vision, the people who have the possibility, the capability of giving you a vision and leading from the front would be the people who would hold the highest amount of power and authority. In a command culture, the decisions are made very methodically. It's pretty much formula oriented. Remember, they sit on the impersonal end of the decision making spectrum. So the decisions are made very methodically and very formula oriented. In a collaboration culture, the decisions are made after a lot of brainstorming. They are sometimes subjective. They are sometimes consensus oriented. So it's not necessarily the manager would make the decision, but the decisions would be made by the teams together. In a competence culture, the decisions are made based on formula, based on logic. They are impersonal and they are emotionless, but they are efficient, they are scientific, and they are very analytic as well. In a cultivation or culture organization, the decisions would be made, again, very informally, very subjectively, and would have a lot of emotional value attached to it as well. And of course, they would be made only with a lot of participation from all of the people involved. Whenever an organization, when organizations face change, a command organization would either resist the change, or once it makes its mind to make the change, it would mandate the change to everybody. There are no middle grounds for a command culture organization. For a collaboration organization, the team members would call for change themselves, and they would be open to change. In a competence culture, the achievements of the goals would drive the change, because it's an organization that pursues excellence, where the management also sets challenging goals for the teams. They would be open to change, but it's the achievement of those goals that would define if we need to make that change or not. And if the change is not required for achieving that goal, they would not go through that change process. In a cultivation organization, which is slightly different, change is the only constant, is what they believe. So they not only embrace the change, but they assume that change is happening, and they think that change is automatic and change is good. So this is the approach that the people in the cultivation culture would approach changes. Last two here in this list, the key norms in a command organization would be discipline, order, certainty, predictability, standardization. So if you think of an organization and these words come to your mind, it is more than likely that that organization kind of falls into this kind of quadrant, the command culture kind of an organization. In a collaboration culture organization, the egalitarianism, the synergy, the diversity, the united we stand, divided we fall kind of attitude is a normal thing in that kind of organization. In a competence culture organization, professionalism, creativity, excellence, craftsmanship, autonomy, these are the key norms in that organization. And in the cultivation organization, faith, shooting for the stars, growth, purpose, dedication, these are the key norms of the organization. Lastly, in terms of climate, when you walk into the room, how does a command organization feel like? You would feel that it is serious. There would be probably not a lot of chatter going on. There would be an air of secrecy. Things would be very formal, very steady, and very impersonal. You walk into a collaboration organization, you would see that people have this attitude of work hard, play harder. It would feel like a busy place. It would feel like people have emotional attachment. People are talking, they are having a chatter, they are having high fives. It is lively. It is people trust each other. If you look at a competence culture organization, it would be competitive. It would be intensely paced. It would be impersonal. It would be rigorous. It would be rational, but it would be formal. But it would also be, on the other hand, prideful as well. People would take a lot of pride on doing whatever they are doing. It would be serious. In a cultivation organization, it would be very informal. It would be caring. It would be lively, but it would be magnetic lively. It would be very giving. It would be emotional, and it would be personal. And also on top of that, it would be very spirited. You would feel like people are behind, going for a purpose which is bigger than themselves. So this is the kind of environment, this is the kind of climate that you would see if you go in a cultivation organization. So that pretty much sums up all the different focus areas, and this is how Schneider defines the culture. One thing that I want to say here is that the word command, the competence, the cultivation, and collaboration are trivialization of a very complex topic that culture is. So when you look at the word command, do not assume that command culture is a bad culture. Command culture is probably a right kind of a culture for certain type of problem, for a certain type of organizations. So the words command are not necessarily bad. The word command or competence is not bad. The word cultivation is not bad or good either. So don't use those adjectives to mean that one type of culture is bad and the other type of culture is good. It's just that, when you define a model, you need to give a particular quadrant a name. So command in Agile word probably has a very bad connotation attached to it. But the intent of the author to use the word command is not to give it a negative connotation, but just to find the right objective to identify that quadrant. Yeah.
Great. I have one question. In fact, comment, Nafees. I think I have came across this similar 4 quadrants, which is called the competing values framework. Have you come across the same similar framework, competing values framework? And it also talks about the same: create, compete, control, and collaborate. Is this the same like a Chandler's model, or?
So Schneider never uses that term. So it must have been a similar model by a different author.
Yeah, it looks like it, because they are also talking about the competing values in culture and also competing values regarding the leadership as well. So I feel like these 3 models are a bit overlapping with each other, but they talk exactly, not a whole 100%, but almost I see like 70 to 80% is the same thoughts for that.
Thank you for sharing it. What is it called?
Yeah, I can share the link here. This is called Competing Values Culture, and
Okay.
it is a book. Okay, I can. I was browsing through it right now when you are sharing. So that's because when I took the certified agile leadership course from Pete Behrens, he
Mm-hmm.
talked about the same things, and that rang the bell. So I can okay, if
If you could share that, afterwards, or maybe in the chat somewhere, that would be great.
I have it now. Actually, I can do that right away to everyone.
That would,
So yeah, so this is called competing values leadership. So I think it's very interesting, at least.
yeah.
So another question, Nafees, since I feel like it's a lot of information, how can we make it more engaging with the leadership team? Because so they realize it, like how are the different cultures and where do we need to go? How
So
can we?
if you are a coach and if you go to the organization, one thing that I would recommend not doing is running a survey yourself. Because what happens is you run the survey, and then there is another worst thing that you can do. You go to an organization and you say, hey, you have a command and control culture, this is bad, your leadership style is bad, so don't do that. I guess one thing that can be done is, as an organizational sense making activity, so Peter Benzema probably would have touched upon that as well, is that when you go to the organization as an agile coach, what your role is not to pass judgment, but make sure the organization understands the context that they are in, and then offer them help in finding the solution to the problems that they have identified. In that context, if this is a good organizational sense making tool, so you could go to the organization and you offer them this tool and you say it could help us identify what the culture is right now, and if it matches the expectation that you have, or if it matches the target culture that you think you are developing here, because leaders are the only people who can build a culture, really. So you can ask them to run this survey within that organization, and then the results are shared, and then you can have a discussion about it. And as I was saying earlier, it's not the final output that, hey, 40 of the 50 participants said that we are a collaboration culture organization. It's the discussions that happen when we are collecting that information, and when we discuss that is the most valuable thing. Because when the leaders see this is what they say, hey, I think it's a collaboration organization, I am doing X, Y, and Z. But all the people who filled the survey said differently. Then there is a difference in understanding. And then as a coach, you would ask, okay, what do you want to do about it? And then take it from there.
Right. So you suggest that it would be good to start with some observations and surveys so they get to see the reality from the practical aspects and what they are thinking. So
Yeah.
one more question.
And you as just say one more thing. And you as a coach are not passing a judgment that this is what your organization is, this is what is wrong with your organization. You are not doing that. You are letting the people of the organization show a picture, and you're giving it to the leaders and saying, hey, what do you think?
It's like showing the mirror to the organization.
Kind of, yeah. But just showing the mirror, it has a negative connotation attached to it. It's like, hey, look how bad you are. So that's why I'm saying, show them the reality of the world.
Right. Yeah, if audience has more questions, please ask, because this is very close. This topic is close to my heart as well. But my one more question is, do you think, Nafees, that an organization lies only in one quadrant, or is it spread across all 4 quadrants?
Lovely question, amazing question. So Schneider thinks that most of the organization should fall in one quadrant. And remember, falling in one quadrant, let's say somebody falls in a competence quadrant, which means they pay attention to the problems which are in future. So they are possibly oriented, and their decision making is impersonal. Does not mean that they don't have teams, or they do not value diversity, or they do not want to grow people, or do not have any structure, or they do not follow their leaders. But the saying that they are in a competence culture means that they are more in that culture than any other culture. As I was saying, it's not black and white. It's when going gets tough, and if they have to pick 2 out of 1, they will pick the option which would land them into a competence culture. They would certainly be doing teams, they would certainly be working together, they would certainly be growing their people, there would certainly be some directions and some formality and some structure, but there would be more competence than command and collaboration and culture. Having said that, Schneider says very few organizations could have two cultures going on.
Right, that's very interesting. Do we have any questions from our audience?
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Michael Sahota talks a lot about it. When in the organization we say, there is a IT manager who says, okay, let's I have, in the previous organization that I was part of, we did this thing called Agile. It was great, so let's do Agile here. And somehow let's imagine that he or she really brings his entire team along the journey, and so he or she doesn't mandate the Agile thing, and the entire team kind of adopts Agile. It starts doing Agile, it starts being Agile, and all that kind of stuff. But this entire agility is confined within the spectrum of the IT area, which Michael Sahota calls a bubble. Now, in that context, the bigger organization has a different culture. The culture that is created within that bubble could probably be a different culture. So organizations can have a main culture, and the bubbles within the organizations can have different cultures as well.
Right, very, very interesting comment. Having bubble inside a bubble, very interesting.
Yep.
So yeah, so you wanted me to remind we have 12 more minutes remaining. So
Awesome.
Let's ask any questions from audience. It's been very interesting information sharing by friend Nafees.
So I have approximately 20 to 25 minutes worth of content more. Now there are a couple of things we can do. Be agile. There are a couple of things we can do. We can take more questions here, or I can rush through the remaining content as well.
Okay. Do you intend to share your slides afterward, or
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I'll share the slide. No worries.
Okay, that's good then. So how
in fact, I have presented this in a conference last year here in Australia. What I would do is I uploaded this already, so I'll share the same link with you so you guys can have a look at that as well. There would be probably one or two slides in the beginning which are different, but yeah, other than that is exactly identical.
Nice. I felt like yes.
Yeah, I have one question. I have after listening the discussion, I have a use case appear in my mind. That let's suppose we have an organization, a small organization in which 4 teams are working under one leader. If I make the use case simple, let's 4 managers and 1 leader, CEO. And every manager is thinking by his own way. One is have mindset of command kind of, another has collaborative and cultivative and competency. So how in organization we will ensure that will it be a CEO responsibility to bring a specific kind, just like I want to bring competency kind of culture, develop kind of culture in my organization, then who will be the responsible, a CEO, or we need to train our 4 managers to build the team accordingly? Because I feel that the cultivation type of organizational culture is I like the most after the discussion. So can you guide me how a CEO or the manager, how can we help them to develop a specific type of culture in our organization?
So what do you think, who needs to be on board if the organization wants to create a certain type of culture?
I don't get your question.
So if you think you want to change your culture from the existing whatever it is right now to a certain culture, who do you think needs to be involved in that journey?
I think the most powerful person, like a CEO or yes, a CEO. I think chief executive.
Did you say at most?
I think if with CEO, if I will sit with managers and I guide them that, or we arrange some talk or event such like we are doing right now, and we train them that this specific culture will most suitable for gaining the success for long time. So I think the manager also will be the part of the conversation.
So let me give you an example scenario. If you are the CEO of an organization, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah,
and an employee comes, knocks at your door, and you have an open door policy, and he or she walks into your room and says,
yeah,
I have a model that I want you to look at, and I want
yeah,
you to change the culture of the organization and to make it a cultivation culture.
yeah,
What would you respond with?
yeah. It depends. The person coming into my room is how much adding the value in the system. If a person who is doing nothing and speaking only, I will not take the conversation serious. But if manager or someone who is putting very much value in the system, then I definitely will listen why he wants to add this. So that's my answer, I think.
Hmm, hmm. Look, the question that you asked initially, that how can you approach this, it's a very complicated question. I don't think I
Yeah,
can do justice with answering that question. And I'm intentionally not giving you an answer that, hey, do this and you will be successful.
yeah,
If,
okay,
I'm happy to have a chat offline, but this is what change management is about. This is what agile coaches do.
yeah, great, okay, sure, sure.
Zishan, Zishan, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think I would. It's a bit interesting situation as well. So I think what you said, I will agree with that.
Yeah,
Uh, the course that I don't. Let me think about it. How I'm phrasing it. Yeah. So there was this guy who I attended the training with. So he one day during the training stood up and asked one of the participants to also stand up, and he said, "Please raise your hand in the air, like you're trying to do a high five." So the participant did that, and then he also raised his hand like he's also going to have a high five. But instead of high fiving, he started pressing the hand of the participant, right? So the both their hands were right next to each other, touching each other like a clap, but not, they were not clapping, they were not high fiving. Both hands were touching each other, and the instructor was just pushing the hand of the participant, like with some force, and naturally the participant kind of pushed back, and this kept on happening for like 10 to 12 seconds, and then the instructor retreated his hand back and then asked the participant, why were you pushing my hand back? And the participant said, because you were pushing for it, because you were pushing it. And then the instructor paused, looked at the entire room, and said, this is what happens when we as agile coaches go to the organization and try to push a change.
amazing, amazing.
The natural response of humans is to push back. No matter, there is no logic behind that. You can't
Nicely
say,
put. Very
yeah.
nice. Very
So
nice. Yeah.
so I'm saying that when we go with a particular agenda in our mind, that this is what I want you to change, nothing would happen. I've learned this lesson a very hard way myself. I was the one who used to go to the organization and say, oh no, this is not good, this is not good enough, you can do much better, let me help you change. Nobody changes because you want them to change. Anybody changes because they think they need to change. What you can do is to identify how your body of knowledge that you are an expert in can help them achieve their goal. Make their goal your problem, help them solve their problem, and you are successful. But if you go to the organization and try to push what you want to achieve onto an organization, onto a person, onto a department, it's a hard journey, and it's one which is full with frustration, stress, and maybe a little bit of success here and there, but nothing good.
them, not about you.
It's not about you.
Yeah. Good. Just wanted to, a very interesting discussion. I would like to request Shahryar to repeat his question. I felt like, yeah, could you please repeat your question? I just want to give it another
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, yeah. Let me repeat again. Let's suppose we have 4 managers and 1 CEO, and they are a team under the 4 managers, and 4 managers have full control of making decisions, and they have different mindsets. That's why they are following the 4 different organizational structure. Sorry guys, I in my area there is spare time, so I think I will post my question on chat.
No, I think we can hear you. Go ahead. It's all right. Posting it on chat would take long time. It's all right. Go ahead.
Okay, so the 4 managers have different mindset and following a different organization structure, but one of them is feeling that the particular organizational structure is the best one, and they can help them to succeed for a long time. So how the one person will try to take over the situation and will try to convince everyone that they should not follow the 3 of 1 in despite of one of specific like competence, so they can work together and grow together and get the success. That was the question actually.
Okay. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
asking again, and thank you for clarifying. Does anybody else want to have a go at it before I go?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment if you say so, Nafees. Yeah, I think this is very interesting situation, and as I think I will directly reflect what Nafees said earlier. It's not about you; it's about them in a simple way. So one of the possible ways, hey, this is how we are thinking differently. What is our vision? What is our goal? And how we can achieve that together. Culture can always change. In fact, some can start from command to compete, to cultivate and collaboration. But the shortest thing might be to show them the reality. Hey, these are the 4 different thoughts from where we can start thinking our company's vision and the goals that we want to achieve. Yeah, what else we can do in fees?
No, I think absolutely you've nailed it. Do not make Agile or DevOps or one of those things your objective. They are vehicles to get wherever you want to achieve. Identify what is the problem of what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And this is what the initial intent of this presentation was, that identify your problem with respect to your customer. Are you trying to satisfy a particular customer need? Are you trying to get the most value for the shareholder? Are you trying to hit your KPIs? Or are you trying to reduce the size of the team? Or are you trying to relocate from maybe one part of the country to be a company that is doing business in 6 different continents? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? What is the business problem that you're trying to solve? And then from that problem, identify, do we have is it a north star for all of us or in the organization? Do we have conformity around it? Do we have shared understanding around it? Do we have all the synergies behind it or not? If you have identified it as one vision, as you were mentioning a minute ago, then make sure this is the job of the leaders to rally the troops behind that, be able to define what it is, be able to articulate it, what it is to the organization, and give energy to the rest of the organization to go behind this. Now, whatever needs to be done to be able to achieve it is secondary, not unimportant, but secondary to the main objective that you have identified. Make sure you have identified what the main objective is, and then and gather around it.
Yeah, great. And one more thing, perhaps I can also add from my experience. It's always good that the team makes the decision for themselves instead of the coach takes a decision for them. It will be more effective if the team takes their own decision, even if might lead to some failure, but then they learn from the failure always. If we protect the team so much or too much, and we always are concerned about they will fail, let them fail for a while and see what they can learn out of it to make it more effective and more impact.
Yep.
Good. A lot of good discussion. Looks like this is a topic that we might need to continue talking, Nafees. If you can spare more session or 1 hour more session in the future. We are already 1 minute over the time. Nafees, you shared that you had a few other slides. Do you close here, or do you just want to a quick overview within 5 minutes?
I think let's stop here. What I've covered so far is the basic Schneider culture model, which is covered by the first book that William Schneider has written. What we can do is have another session where we start from here and then talk about the customer promise and the other things that I wanted to talk about.
Absolutely, sounds like a good idea. And you read my mind. How can we read more about this Schneider's model? Do you have any book or articles?
So he's written a book. I do not remember the title, but search by his name, Schneider. Schneider Electric. It's the same spelling. It's a different guy, but same spelling. William Schneider is the name of the author. Search on Amazon. There are 2 books. So whatever we have covered so far is from the first book, the older book.
Right, good. I will double check it with Nafees after. The 2 messages there, WhatsApp group as well. There also join our Slack group. We are not super active. However, I really appreciate if you continue asking questions there, and we can keep the momentum. Good. So let's conclude this session. I would like to thank you, Nafees, once again for a very nice session, and we can touch base again for the second session to continue from whenever you.
Sure. Good. Thank you very much for having me, and pleasure is all mine.
Thank you very much, guys, and thank you very much for attending. Bye from my side.
Cheers.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for help and sharing the knowledge.
Cheers. Bye-bye.